Thank you. Yeah, a warm welcome also from my side. Maybe the first thing you need to mention, or I need to mention, is maybe you scan this barcode. We have 2 polls for Slido, so that you are prepared for that. And my presentation is about Doxis, the platform. It's a bit of a tech talk, therefore we really named it the platform. And what I will do is to explain you a bit of the background. So I will focus a bit on what's behind the scenes. So what's behind of, let's say, these kind of magic. So maybe we'll look into behind what it is, and look here, it's Doxis. Woo! And we'll even explain you that we are ready for the future already, even without AI. So I understand, and of course I will talk about AI as well, that's clear. But even if you are not yet ready for AI, the platform is ready for you for the future. Okay, oh my God, the closing keynote on technology, that's challenging. So we have seen so many business-focused presentations, eye-opening keynotes, customer success stories, and now it's about technology. Oh my goodness. So really, Doxis, what should I do? And it's it's an opportunity, but I get some strategies to help. So first of all, I should start with a story or some anecdote. And I would say, okay, thank you for nothing. I'm a techie, I'm not a storyteller. The next one is connect to business outcomes, which is always not too easy for me as well. But you will see in my presentation some sort of simply explained, and I use some, let's say, techie jokes, techie comics, and one of these is Geek and Poke, and he's simply explained about business IT alignment. As you can see, that's really simple on that, so I will try that. Next one is use visual and demos, and we had already so many demos, we had live demos, so I will focus a bit on visuals in this case, and I even did it. So check that's done already. And finally, simply complex, simplify the complex. Yes, I already did it as well. But you will see, I really try to simplify some of the concepts to have the right balance. We will not go too deep into the technology, of course. Okay, a closing keynote, a good closing keynote should always, let's say, close the circle to the opening keynote, of course. And that's what the magic is, the next generation content management. And I will first of all talk about the hyperscale document management, and that's about defeating the maelstrom. So we have seen that so many content to be managed. And the bottom line is really, we need to ride the document storm on the rock-solid Doxis platform. And then, of course, that's more or less the fundament. Then we want to look more how to get insights from one document. So these bad guy, these inquisitor, you know that, asking questions about a document. But when you think even bigger and even about more collaborative processes, knowledge management, then you finally want to go more into all documents, into these dark data. So turning your document base into a knowledge base. That's really important. So that's what I will talk about. There's one guy missing here. We had 4. Maybe we will see him at the end. So let's wait on that. From a technical point of view, managing these huge amount of documents, what you really need is scaling. And how do you achieve that? The easiest way is just with hope. So let's hope. Maybe it's not sufficient, so let's do more. Pray. So with hope and pray, that's fine. Or there's, of course, another way, is just use Doxis. Yeah. So I will give you some real-life examples from our cloud production environment, and they would say, oh, it's a platform, stupid. Even the platform creates business value without AI. And the first of all is a project currently where we migrate a big installation into the cloud using the file import service, and the customer expected 10 million documents a day. And what we have seen here is just the average. It's just the first run of one FIPS job. It's about 80, 90K per 5 minutes, what you see here. So when you do the math, you're around 23 million documents a day. I thought, okay, let's put 10% buffer on that, so we achieve 21 million documents a day, which is much more than we need to do in this case. Another example was a proof of concept from an on-premise system over the internet to the cloud, just using our API. We need to achieve 600,000 documents per hour, which is also quite much. But we achieved already just with the API 1.5 million per hour, and of course that's 36 million a day, or would be, over the internet to the cloud. So cloud is really fast, or can be fast. Next one is also another customer. That's the overall response time at the load balancer. So of course I understand that there will be searches which take more than 40 milliseconds, of course. But if you take the overall average of requests we are processing at the load balancer, you are at 40 milliseconds. That's also quite fast, of course. And finally, that's a crazy example. That's more than these, let's say, 6 million documents we have at Northmark. That's about now already 2.8 billion documents in the archive. It's a bank. All the end users of the bank access the documents directly from our platform. But the real, crazy topic is that they want to have object-level permissions. So each document has its own permission, which is implemented with multi-value descriptors. And we have now about 33 billion multi-values, which are checked during search. Customers happy, we are happy, that's working. If you are a database administrator, you see a bit of the details here behind that. So that's the database statistics. We are using partitioning in our system because without partitioning that would not work. But this is an example, please. If you do something like that, first talk to us. So that's nothing you could say, oh, I just do it and it will work in every kind of search. No, there's some, let's say, constraints you need to understand so that something like that is working. But you see, there is a value just from defeating this maelstrom. And now I want to have a first poll. So hopefully you already have your Slido at hand. I'm interesting, how many documents are you filing as a peak? So think about the peak, not the average. What do you need to maybe at the end of the year as a peak need to file into such a system? Maybe now, maybe in the future. So let's wait a second. Okay, we have some, and I'm happy about that, even more than 1 million. That's very much per day, of course. That's great. I even didn't expect that. But it's also okay when you say, okay, it's just a few. So we are totally fine with you have 41 workflows like Northmark and so on. So that's also very fine to have a system with which complex workflows and so on. It's mostly, of course, okay, about 10 to 100,000, but there are many even with more than 100,000 to 1 million, which for that you even need some scaling, of course. And that's what you achieve, at least in the easiest way within the cloud. Okay, thanks very much for that. So let's have a look again into the Doxis words and a bit into the roadmap. So we already have seen this year 25 releases of different products, solutions, components of the whole Doxis words. And of course we are doing more. So let's do a flight around the universe, what's coming up next. Even from the platform, we are investing there into, let's say, some system requirements platform shifts. We have these, maybe the technical people know that, these Jakarta EE nightmares. So we need to go to Tomcat 10, JBoss 8, and so on. So please plan that we need to do this shift. We also invest in WinCube. We mentioned that many times today. Okay, you find the AI in WinCube. We even now provide WinCube at 64-bit with the next release, not only 32. We had it already in the demo. The first version of the Cloud Launchpad is coming, and so on. And there will be more and more and more investment into the platform, into cloud. For example, the full replacement of the administration client, and we will also see more investment into, let's say, accessing content which is not in Doxis, which we call the federation service. Okay, there's another very important product initiative, which is the UX. And we've seen that in all the demos already, with Business Studio, with WebCube. But there's more. There's also improvements in MobileCube, even in WinCube, some UX improvements. We have the dashboards and workspaces, which are already there. Doxis is also, it's not only AI, it's also user experience. We have already released a new invoice ledger in SAP Fiori as well. And that is, again, it's also about user experience. And of course, we will do more. We are still working, of course, on finalizing WebCube so that it's fully modernized. There's still much to do on that, but the real vision is to have a fully modernized WebCube with an extremely good UX. The next one is integrations and solutions. And we have shown that as well. So that's already available. The integration in Business Studio with these mappings, for example, we have shown Doxis for Salesforce, and we had already done many enhancements to our solutions, P2P, HR, contract, healthcare. And of course, we will further invest into that. We get asked about, let's say, what's with Power Automate, for example. We're already talking about more international e-invoice formats and so on. So that's very important as well. So please keep that in mind, that you are ready with our platform, even if you're not using AI. But of course, AI might be still the most interesting topic, at least for me, of course. And we already released many enhancements within AI as well. I will talk about that a bit later now, with a custom plugin, medical document management, and so on. So that's now part of my talk. And even I will talk, I'm not sure whether you can see that below, about what is, again, behind the scenes of superhuman search. So you have seen that in the product keynote already, but what's behind that, which is called RAG and NLQ. So maybe you do not know what RAG is already, but I will explain you. But I will start, as I mentioned before, with processing one document. So this intelligent document processing, and as I mentioned, it is a bit of a tech talk, so I will show you at least a little bit architecture slides as well, and how we differentiate, especially to other vendors. Because the normal IDP vendors, what do? They just extract data. So they have a typical workflow. I do OCR, I classify, I extract. Maybe I have a bit of validate, so these human in the loop, and then I export that to another system. And typically they process mails, paper, fax. So I'll also learn now the best 7 fax servers, okay? And maybe e-invoices, even throughout these processes. And then it's sent over to a workflow system in many cases. So you do, again, about invoice, you do the invoice approval. So some matching, some approval, posting to the ERP system, and sometimes then you put it into the archive, because workflow and archive in many cases are separated. And in the content service platform, you have, of course, more content. You have everything from your end users, from the ERP system, from the CRM system, from the HR system. So there's much more content than just inbound. And we believe that's not the right architecture. So our architecture, I guess as you know it, is this common content service path, the common metadata platform, where we are very proud about to integrate content management and process management, because that's so important. You have digital content, you need to have workflow embedded, but also AI-powered document understanding. So we can process every input. It's not only about inbound, if you're, let's say, having some input from your normal end users, from teams, from the CRM system, whatever, you can apply, of course, AI as well. You do not need to put that into some input channels through an IDP system. So in our case, these kind of tasks like classification, extractions are embedded into the platform, and there are even more activities around AI, what we have seen also with Doxis, which is about question and answering, maybe finding similar documents, so which is based already on your document base. So searching, relating, that's what you can do with the ECM system. And then you can really focus on top just on the business processes. So really think about AI just to inject into every business process. It's not just inbound before, it's throughout every process and every content you put into the platform. And of course for every user, not only human in the loop, it's especially also for the knowledge workers. So you see that you all make picture, that's great, but you get the slides afterwards as well. Okay, and what I want to do now is, again, I want to look a little bit into these, let's say, classical use cases with our Doxis intelligent document understanding. So that's really about classification extraction. And then again, I want to talk about, which is more finding, searching, question answering about these RAG, whatever that is. We do not know yet. Except that Steen already spoiled that, but that's fine. So first of all, the classification extraction, and I will use the invoice example, even if we talked about e-invoices. And of course, I know that that is a game changer for invoices, but it's not a game changer for composable AI. So I want to explain that to you with the invoice example. And what we do in Dido is using many different methods to get the data out from an invoice. So first OCR, then we have our own generic invoice extraction, we call that. Then most important is information from the ERP system. You do not need to apply machine learning for, let's say, tasks where you just, which you can solve with lookups. You can only also use just barcodes. So if there's a barcode in the invoice, use the data from the barcode, of course. Then you can optimize. So our professional service teams can, let's say, optimize certain suppliers or vendors in the profile, or you can do that on the fly with learning for invoices and Doxis. And finally, we have, let's say, the real machine learning behind, which is Azure Document Intelligence in this case. And maybe for the future as well, we may also use large language models to extract invoices. But how to combine all these different information? And in the past, let's say we just first select the best method, the best expert, and then use that for a certain field, which is typical. You first, let's say, in AI, do some classification. What should I do for this task? And then I use the result. And now, the new way is that we more or less ask all experts in parallel, all needed, and then combine the results. And the details, so let's go a bit into the details. It's a tech talk again. So you see above all the different sources we have, and here we see what you all need to extract. Amounts, IBAN, invoice date, line items, dunning letter, so many different information, and that's quite complicated. And for each of these information we need to extract, we now can combine the different methods, mostly in parallel. We even have here some kind of priority list that can be applied as well, but typically it's done in parallel and then voted. And again, that is an example just for invoices. I know with e-invoices is not so important anymore. But first of all, the world is bigger than Europe. So it's still relevant. You have suppliers from outside Europe. You have subsidiaries outside Europe, and SAR is going to US as well. So for us, that's still important. And second, it's also an example of composable AI. And you have so many other document types where you need such a mechanism like that. And therefore, I'm back on these game changers. So we have this extremely fast-pacing innovation in AI, and we do not know whether we're betting on the right horse, or at least we already know that we can use only one AI. We need to use different AIs, and that's about what we call composable AI. And again, from the architecture perspective, that's a bit in the heart of SAR. So when you start with ECM, of course, it was very much clear that we, let's say, do it storage agnostic, so you can plug in different storage systems. And we did the same even with BPM. So we have integrated 4 different BPM systems, which you can even combine. And now it was very, very much clear for us that we also do a plug-in architecture for different kind of cognitive service tasks. So technically, again, classification, extraction, question answering, which you now can solve with different plugins. For example, Azure AI Document Intelligence, we use that for invoice. And then we decided, okay, what should we do next? So we integrated OpenAI. And then we decided first, and that's already released, we allow you to plug in your own AI. Because many customers have own AI teams. There might be industry-specific models. So first of all, we want to be open, so you can plug that in. And then you can use that in WebCube, in WinCube, and so on, because that's the value, again, of the platform. And what we are thinking about with large language model, and Mark showed that already, is next would be Hugging Face, so that you would be able to use some open source large language models. I do not have a poll for that, but I want to ask you, who is only allowed to use AI on-premise? Maybe hands up. That's still quite many. So I'm just talking about AI. So CSB archive is on-premise, but even not allowed to send maybe a document for any analytics to the cloud. And that we still, of course, need to decide when we release that. That would be for you, for example. So Mark shared that already. That's models called Mistral, Falcon, and so on. There are models which can be used also on-premise. And of course, we are thinking about maybe in the future, when Google Gemini, Bedrock, Claude, whatever, could be better than OpenAI. Okay, we are ready to integrate that. So that's important, because in the background, we know ChatGPT was the iPhone moment, which just means if you have an iPhone moment, afterwards you have many smartphones or many large language models, of course. That's some kind of an automatic consequence. There's more than GPT in the future, or already now. You've seen the possibility to plug in a custom AI, and we did that already for healthcare with a partner. I know most of you might not need any medical document understanding. I also cannot explain you this example, but it's pretty much clear that you need some industry-specific AI in some use cases, even in this case, matching to these medical codes. Without this matching, it's useless, typically. And for example, that has been now done with our plugin concept and with Averbis as a partner. And you can do that with your AI if you need to plug in something like that as well. Okay, what's the next game changer is really that these general purpose foundation models, these large language models, are very, very good without training already. But the question is, how can we apply this, let's say superpower, this magic power to your document base easily? We need to embed that. And the other question is, AI, especially this generative AI, is trained to deliver compelling results. I always say, okay, it's like a bit like a salesman. But how can we improve trust and avoid hallucination? And that is what we typically call this contextual AI, so give additional context. And that, again, is about this acronym RAG. And now I want to know from you, what does that mean? What is RAG from your knowledge? Is it rapid application generation? Is it retrieval augmented generation? Is it ridiculous aberrated gossip? Maybe yes. I'm not sure whether we have finance guys here, but then it must be recurrent annual growth. It could be rapid application generation, or if I guess you know reinforcement learning, so it could be also reinforced applied generation. So whatever these RAG term or RAG term. Okay, I like the 14–15% about gossip. Okay, but I'm happy because I said when this is not on the top, I will stop my talk. No, that's true. It's just called retrieval augmented generation. What does that mean? I will explain that to you. So maybe we start really at the beginning. So with the internet. You know, it's Neuland in Germany. So what you do is about, let's say, really you take all the public data and knowledge and put that into a database, which might be the Google search index, and then that's really great, but it's just search. And what changes now is with generative AI that you more or less put these kind of public data into a really, really big large language model, and now these models understand this data, at least a little bit, so you can talk to it. You can really ask questions. You can talk a bit like to an expert, or maybe at least to a student, maybe not yet an expert. But there are some issues. So, of course, it's limited. It's not up to date. It just has a status when it has been trained. It hallucinates, because when it doesn't know, it just creates some, let's say, output. And of course, it doesn't know your data. That's for sure. And you're living behind a bit these boundaries, these nice public world with your private data. And it's important that's your data and that's private. And you have that in Doxis. So of course, we're also indexing that, typically with metadata, as you know. So that's great. Maybe just search. So always say, thank God it's not a file system, of course. That's helpful already, and you may also include, let's say, of course, further information into Doxis. And the simple question is, how you now come to the dreamland where you can turn your document database really into a knowledge base so that you can ask questions against an AI system as we have it here. That's the task we need to solve also for superhuman search. How to do that? Okay, we know from Doxy, you can chat already with a document. So we give, let's say, the context of the document to the large language model, and then you can ask questions about that. And the question now is how to do that with millions of documents, and especially also not only millions of documents. In most of the cases, you do not want to ask really a question against your whole document database, but you want to have a question against, please answer that for a project, for a supplier, for a customer, so just for a workspace. So in general, what could you do? First is, I just train my own large language model with all the documents I have. I have so many documents. That's definitely not an option. First of all, you might have, 2.8 billion documents, but that's nothing for a large language model. And even if you have so much document, maybe then you would first think about, I need to create some nuclear power to, let's say, power my GPUs, or you need to buy so many GPUs that you really need to have the smartphone number of the NVIDIA CEO. So that's really not an option. But there are other possibilities, and first of all, that's called fine-tuning or transfer learning. So you can take an existing large language model, not really that from OpenAI, and then take your documents and create your own fine-tuned large language model. That is possible, and that's an interesting topic, and that is something what we will provide, but in the future, because let's say the quick win and the fastest step is RAG. But we believe in the future, smaller language models, in addition with your, let's say, custom-specific, domain-specific knowledge, will provide a value as well. And that's what will Doxis and the platform provide out of the box? Let's say using a Mistral or Falcon model with your data and do fine-tuning on that automatically with the data you have in the system. But first, I want to talk about retrieval augmented generation. What is this? And that is mostly a user does a query and you have all the documents. You do some kind of magic retrieval, and based on that, you ask the machine learning model. And let's have a look into that. This is from the research paper. So how is it working? And we take as an example a question about Sam Altman, about this sudden dismissal last year. I'm not sure whether you know that. That was really some kind of live Game of Thrones. I believe there will be some Hollywood movie sometime in the future about this move. But if you ask, I believe even the current GPT 4.0 model, you will get an answer. Oh, I do not know anything about a dismissal of Sam Altman. That never happened. So we need to inject, let's say, live data, or even you would inject your documents you have in Doxis. How to do that? You need to invest a little bit on that, because first of all, what you need to do is you need to create some so-called vectors. You need to create chunks of your documents and then apply so-called embeddings onto that. So you transform documents into a mathematical representation, and then you do the same with your question. So this will become a vector, and all your chunk documents becoming a vector, and then you do a very fast similarity vector search, because you want to find out of millions of documents quite fast what is most related to the question, so what documents and chunks I can use to answer the questions. And that's behind the scenes, so mathematical vector search based on that. We will combine that, and that's important, with metadata search. We will combine that with permissions as well. So when a user asks for a supplier workspace, of course, we do a vector search only with the documents within this supplier workspace, only with the documents a user can see. Retrieval then the chunks and do that. And I always thought about, okay, how can I even more simply explain these, let's say, similarity search, which is about, hey, please just give me the same this. And I thought that the most easiest example is this well-known, maybe most famous movie scene from Harry and Sally, where she says, oh, I want to have the same as she has. I will not go into detail what Sally's do here, maybe not on stage, but that's the most simple way to explain what's behind this so-called technique about K-nearest neighbor. So just give me the same, the similar, and that's what behind here from Harry and Sally. Okay. So then you have these chunks. So now you have from your database, from your document database, the most matching chunks to these questions. And then you just ask the large language model again, please answer this question with this information I generated out of my knowledge base. That's all. So the magic is here, and then you can do the normal question answering again, and then you get a result of it. So that's retrieval augmented generation. Hopefully as simple explained as possible. So that is an important part of superhuman search, and we are currently working on that to provide that with the Doxis platform. And there's one other example and one other technique behind superhuman search, and we have seen that as well in the demo already. So the question, for example, please list me all closed ops, or please list me all the meetings of this customer, and so on. So in fact, when you ask, please list me all closed opportunities, and do that with retrieval augmented generation, then this would be a question to the document content. But that's not a question to the document content. we need to transform that into a structured query. That's just please give me the opportunity in Doxis, which are closed. So that's a normal, simple metadata search, but we need to understand that. So we really need to transform that into structured query language. And in development, we have a debug mode. So we can ask Doxy, what query did you use? So if you do that with Doxy, you will not get an answer, because that's just debug mode. And that's a query. I'm not sure who of you knows our internal query language. It's looked like SQL, so it just said, okay, please select me from the opportunity folder repository where object state is, I don't know, here 9 or X, and type is in some UUID. Ooh, how does Doxy know that? And that's right, that's what really happens behind the scenes. From this simple question, we need to transform that into such a statement. And that's possible again because we give Doxy behind the scenes some context information about the customization you have. So we tell Doxy, and the large language model in this case, look, we have this type, that's an opportunity. This opportunity has these descriptors. There is a descriptor which is a state. The state has these kind of values. And the values and the values in the database are this. And we tell, okay, but this value is closed won, and this value is closed lost. So that the system even say, okay, oh, the query is clear. I understood, it aligns with the schema. I understood, closed ops refers to closed won in that state. So this kind of transformation is behind the scenes because it looks very simple. Oh, just please list me all closed opportunities. But it isn't so simple to answer that for the system. But the combination of context information, the customization we have, and of course these large language models allows you to do something like that. And now you understand a bit what's behind superhuman search, which is technically retrieval augmented generation on these understanding these natural query transformation into, let's say, a structured query. Okay, so my summary. That was a CTO edition. Let's say simply explained what's behind the scenes so that you're becoming 100 times more productive. So there's some technical background about that. And then, of course, to have just smarter business with intelligent documents. And maybe this business IT alignment, again, also simply explained. So maybe we just align on start using Doxy, start using AI, so we can even simplify that. And really, please, let's say, defeat your own paralyzers. Really, just start on using that. Do not talk too much about just alignment. Macro presented, okay, we have a package, really just to try out AI. Sascha Lobe presented that as well, so we need to learn to voranzuscheitern, sorry. I didn't know how to translate that, which is mostly about, in English, about fast fail, which is hard in Germany, but please just do it. And thanks very much for your attention. I have one more thing, one more simply explained. So in this case, so Sally already has Doxis ICA, so that's amazing. So thanks very much for your attention. I'm open to your question. I think we have 1 minute left, so if there are any questions.
Questions?
More minutes left. Here's 1 minute left.
Okay.
Yes, we have a question.
Thank you. Thanks for the great presentation. It was wonderful, actually.
Just hold the microphone nice and close. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My question is, you mentioned about using different AI products and APIs that are available, and then you're planning to use some composable AI models for Doxis to provide some much more comprehensive services to your customers. I'm trying to understand, when you have large sets of metadata and vectors, documents, content, and all those things, so how are you planning to, control and then provide the users with different roles and permissions and access levels in an organization when it comes to enterprise content management? So how are you planning to address any missing information, or maybe the information I'm looking for is different from my colleague who has higher level of privileges to see the documents and content, maybe another colleague is having different permission sets?
Yes, so in this case, especially when it's about, let's say, also permission, it's still so important to have the metadata because you can most easily control, even in big enterprises, let's say, the documents you want to see with these metadata. And you can also, let's say, combine that again with retrieval augmented generation, which means this creation of the metadata, and that, for example, was what also Mark Forkwartzen showed. No one likes to do that. And I also had here the exercise, okay, to do that by hand. So applying AI to create the metadata is still very important to improve all your processes, to improve the user experience, but also to control the permissions with such a scenario. And by the way, even from the data protection, so we get also asked, let's say, maybe I can do that everything with that with Copilot, and maybe a Copilot connected to Doxis. But in this case, you really transform all or transfer the documents to Microsoft. So in this case, these kind of retrieval augmented generation, and all the text is at Microsoft. That's different when you just use it with Doxis. Then we just send, let's say, one question to OpenAI, even to Azure OpenAI, which has different data protection policy. So from a data protection, it's really important really to do this retrieval augmented generation in our system, because you do only transfer then one question. Hopefully that answers a bit the question, but the combination is important.
Yeah, I get this, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Gregor.
Thank you.